Ukraine, which has a very large population of Russian-speaking people, over which Russia lays legitimate claims, that part will be ceded temporarily, and then there would be negotiations, and of course, the western part would go to NATO. So he is shown that he is willing to come to the negotiating table and talk. And with President Trump's coming to the White House, it is anticipated that the kind of flow of resources, including arms, money, etc., which is flowing to Ukraine, will undergo a very pronounced shift, and that will perhaps compel or put pressure on Zelensky to negotiate in a very serious manner with Russia.
All right. So, Ambassador, sorry to interject over here, but essentially, I mean, understanding both of your opening points over here, it's going to be very interesting to see how Russia is now going to react and respond to this, because Dmitry Medvedev, National Security Council spokesperson for the Kremlin, he was saying that there's going to be hefty retaliation that's coming Ukraine's way. But take a look at this as well. Even as we dissect the Russian gambit, there's another angle to take a look at. The Russian parliament has passed a new law that could have significant diplomatic implications as well. Russia has moved a law that will allow courts to suspend bans on groups designated by Moscow as terrorist organizations, potentially paving the way for Russia to normalize relations with the Afghan Taliban and possibly with Syria's new leadership as well. Now, this new law that was passed by Parliament's lower house, the State Duma, introduces a legal mechanism allowing organizations to be delisted from Russia's official banned list of outlawed terrorists if they cease terrorist-related activities. Under the law, Russia's Prosecutor General could file a request with the court outlining that a banned group has ceased its activities in support of terrorism. Now, understandably, Ambassador, this is coming after Bashar al-Assad's ouster. This is also coming after Taliban and Russia have again sat down on the negotiation table. There's a deal with, how much weapon needs to be supplied from what side to the other as well. When we're looking at Russian gambit, Ambassador, these latest moves, I mean, after Taliban, it could be the HTS as well. Where are we headed?
Well, theoretically speaking, if you look at it dispassionately, and a terrorist organization, once labeled as a terrorist organization, if it changes course and if it decides to give up its path of terrorism and violence, then legitimately it should be able to come into the mainstream and get recognized. Now, what the Russian Duma has done is to give, as you mentioned, the Prosecutor General the right to go before a court of law and say that the Taliban has now changed course and is no longer involved in terrorism. The court may go into the details and say that, all right, Russians can, under Russian law, delist it as a terrorist organization. But that doesn't, really enable Taliban to be delisted from, the UN or other agencies or other governments' lists. One. Two, it doesn't automatically, suppose the Taliban were to get delisted under the Russian law, it will not automatically lead to recognition of the Taliban government in Afghanistan by Russia. So that is the second point. And the third point, which is very important, is that the Russian authorities have been speaking to the world at large about reconstruction activities in Afghanistan, even though it is ruled by the Taliban, because they say enough damage has been done to the economy, to the lives of people, and it needs to be put back on an even keel, and reconstruction is a global responsibility. So all these things have to be viewed in perspective.
All right, Ambassador, I'm going to bring Major General Sudhakar Ji here on this front as well. General, we also have to understand how very strategically Russia is going to look to safeguard its own resources in Syria as well. We've got the Latakia port, we've got the Tartus air base as well. Help the viewers understand what's really on the line and why, even as Bashar al-Assad is granted asylum in Moscow, Russia is sort of now scrambling for any kind of influence in Syria.
Yeah, Kabir, before I respond to your question, let me just allow me to make a little caveat. You see,
A
Taliban
short
having
caveat,
been.
though, General. We're running out of time here.
Okay, fine. So, as I see, things are very dynamic, very complex in Syria. What is going to happen, it is anybody's wild guess. All, as per my assessment, I am given to understand by the latest input which has come to me that Russian resources are back to the Latakia and the Tartus ports, both the places. They are trying to consolidate, regroup, and reorganize. And this thing has taken place in past 24 to 48 hours in a very discreet manner. Number one. Number two, the HTS, which is in the forefront to play the leadership role, whether it is going to go ahead and bring stability in a democratic manner is anybody's guess. It's Donald Trump's call. But the most threatening part is Turkey is actually becoming hyperactive. They have mobilized resources close to the border. There is a fear that they may go in to strike the Kurdish rebels, which is being supported by USA. USA has washed off its hands. Donald Trump has already said that they have nothing to do as far as Syria is concerned. If that happens, then Turkey is coming to the main center stage, which is going to be very detrimental. And I fear that Syria is going to witness a prolonged and extended period of instability in times to come. Back to you, Kavir.
All right then. All right then. There's another angle that we need to probe over here, gentlemen, because even as we're talking about both these, fronts, Russia scrambling for any kind of influence in Syria and the killing of a top Russian general as well. The United States, it is claimed that North Korean troops have been killed fighting Ukrainian forces in Russia's Kursk border region, and these would be the first reported casualties since it emerged in October that North Korea had sent around 8,000 to 10,000 troops to reinforce Russia's war effort. Ukraine's military intelligence agency, the GUR, has also said that at least 30 North Korean troops had been killed or wounded in fighting over the weekend over here. Ambassador Jayant Das Gupta, how are you looking this particular development? I mean, Kim Jong-un sitting back at home, these were essentially first call to be joint military drills. Then people started saying no, they're actually going to be positioned right up, out there. The dresses are not going to be mismatched. They're going to be wearing Russian fatigues as well. What's happening on the Ukrainian border front? We've got North Korean soldiers that are now being killed. At least that's what reports and Western media doing the rounds.
Yes, that is true. And if the reports coming out about casualties suffered by the North Koreans is correct, then obviously they have been involved very close to the border, and if not, the actual battlefront. So this is, just going to enlarge the scope of the conflict and drag into it or suck into it other countries which are not directly involved in the conflict. So this is something which is quite serious. It is not that the Koreans were, way behind the actual battlefront and providing logistics support or something else. They were actually fighting, if the reports are correct about the casualties. So this is disturbing.
Absolutely. You've got the Pentagon's press secretary, Major General Pat Ryder, who said that the U.S. believed that North Korean soldiers had engaged in combat in Kursk alongside Russian forces and suffered casualties, both killed and wounded. General Sudhakarji, listen in to what Pat Ryder had to say. I'm going to come back to you for more.
We believe that there are now at least 10,000 DPRK forces in the Kursk Oblast, recognizing that as we continue to assess DPRK presence on the ground, those numbers could go up slightly in terms of the total number of DPRK troops in Russia. We've seen the press reports about alleged combat ops. We're looking into those, but at this point cannot corroborate those reports. But as you heard Secretary Austin say last week, should these troops engage in combat support operations against Ukraine, they would become legitimate military targets. But as we look at those numbers, we think that the total number of DPRK forces in Russia total could be closer to around 11 to 12,000, with about 10,000, at least 10,000 right now in the Kursk Oblast.
And General, also look at this. Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump's incoming envoy for Ukraine, retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, a big name, a veteran name when you're looking at, America, he's going to be traveling to Kyiv and several European capitals in early January to explore ways to end the Russia-Ukraine war. It's going to be a fact-finding trip. Both of these developments, how are you looking at it?
Well, if that question is meant for me, all I would say is that in the speech of the general officer, it is an escalatory. They try to justify escalation. If the same man is going to go on a round trip to find out as to how to bring about ceasefire, well, I think there is a contradiction in the very thought, very approach. It is USA which has to take a final call. Do they escalate, even if the North Korean troops have been found in the battlefront? Or they take some countermeasure so as to play it safe, so as to contribute towards the overall peace and ceasefire as early as possible. For me, as a military man, I personally feel strategic restraint in all the stakeholders, whether it is USA or it is Russia, it will actually lead them to some kind of a stability and some kind of a ceasefire in the earlier time frame. If that doesn't happen, then we are playing into the fire again, like the tactical missiles of USA have been fired. A number of provocative actions have been undertaken by Ukrainian force at the behest of USA and the Western alliance. I am afraid things will continue to go out of hand and a chaos will be created for Donald Trump to actually put him down and render him unable to actually fulfill his commitment and promise in a given time frame as he has committed during the election campaign. Back to you, please.
I'll tell you what, General, a situation of chaos is certainly a situation where Donald Trump thrives in. He loves chaos now, doesn't he? Ambassador, I'm going to bring you in on this one as well. Do you concur with what the General has told us? How could Kellogg's trip, play a significant role in the ending of this Russia-Ukraine war that time and again Donald Trump has said, I'm going to make it happen?
Well, the Ukraine war, the NATO, of course, other countries of Western Europe, they have been compelled by the US to contribute in a major way to the Ukraine conflict. Now, if the US pulls the plug through Donald Trump and says that, sorry, if you want to carry on, you carry on, we will stop our supplies and our, money, the flow of money. So then I think it will undergo a very pronounced change. The whole
to say no money means no war. No money means no war.
Practically, but of course the others have also contributed. But mind you, the US is the leading light of the NATO forces. And so if the US says, you can't really carry on like this, the war will stop. Whether it will be an unjust kind of an agreement on the thrust upon Ukraine, or it will be something which will be negotiated, which will carry a balance of both sides. That is for the world to see. The second point is, when we are so close to a new presidency, which is going to be so vital to decide the fate of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, to escalate it through any means and to look around for excuses to escalate it, like the general mentioned, that I don't think is quite on. It is now the time for restraint to be exercised by all sides. And mind you, the battlefront now is under snow. It is not the right time for any battle or any push aggression to be shown by either side. So I think strategic restraint, I would support it entirely, is what is called for.
All right then, gentlemen, I think I'm going to leave it there, because all these 4-5 points that we've dissected the Russian gambit with, strategic restraint, I mean, given Vladimir Putin's change in the nuclear policy, given him scrambling for any kind of, influence in Syria, strategic restraint seems to be far, far away, but that's the call. Will this chaos help Donald Trump, or will it help the US-European synergy vis-a-vis the Ukraine-Russia war? We'll have to wait and find out. And as the ambassador said, pulling the plug is going to be of key importance as well. Ambassador Jayant Das Gupta, former Indian diplomat, and Major General Sudhakar Ji, defense and strategic expert. Always a pleasure to have you with us on News 9. 2 fuel oil tankers as well. Now that we're talking about Russia, before we slip into our commercial breather, take a look at this. We've got 2 fuel oil tankers that were damaged in a storm, and this is in the Russian Black Sea as well. On with a 3rd ship that is now sending distress signals as well. Emergencies have been declared at several locations along the entire coast as the scale of the fuel spillage remains unclear. Here's a complete report. We're going to slip into a quick break. On the other side, top developments.
Spilled oil has washed up along tens of kilometres of the Russian Black Sea coast after 2 tankers were badly damaged in a storm at the weekend, a regional official said on Tuesday. TASS news agency said a 3rd ship was now in trouble, but its hull was intact and no oil had spilled. There are fears it could become one of the largest environmental disasters to hit the region in years. The 1st ship, the Volga-Neft 212, split in half on Sunday in the strait, leaving 1 crew member dead. The 2nd, the Volga-Neft 239, ran aground 87 yards from shore on the east side. All 14 on board were rescued. Both ships are more than 50 years old and were carrying 62,000 barrels of oil in total, TASS reported. A certificate seen by Reuters showed the 3rd tanker was part of the same ageing fleet. Authorities said a local state of emergency had been declared at settlements in Temruk district and 1 village in Anapa district because of spilled oil on the shoreline. Russia's Natural Resources and Ecology Ministry said on Monday the scale of the spillage was still not clear. The Kerch Strait is a key route for exports of Russian grain and fuel products.
B6 Mahindra Electric Origin SUVs.
Bonjour, madam.
आज बड़े फ्रेंच बन रहे हो? हाँ?
याद है 10 साल पहले मैंने कहा था I will take you to Paris.
पेरिस नहीं, पेरी। तुम्हारा प्रोनाउंसिएशन भी ना तुम्हारे इरादे की तरह ऑफ।
मैडम इरादे कभी ऑफ नहीं होते, टेक ऑफ करते हैं।
SBI लाइफ स्मार्ट प्लैटिना सुप्रीम के गारंटीड रिटर्न से करो पूरे अपने इरादे, अपनों से किए सभी वादे। SBI लाइफ, अपने लिए, अपनों के लिए।
Challenge is part of business. Success to me means achieving a lot with limited resources.
It is the idea of bringing the best of East and West together.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News 9. In a major development, India and China have reached a 6-point consensus after the border talks that took place in Beijing today. Now, both the countries have agreed to resume the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, enhance cross-border river cooperation, and restart the Nathula border trade. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met in China in Beijing for the 23rd round of the Special Representatives talks, aiming to address critical issues such as maintaining peace along the line of actual control and restoring bilateral relations strained by a 4-year-long military standoff in eastern Ladakh. Now, the meeting between Ajit Doval and Wang Yi began at 10 a.m. China time. That's supposedly 7:30 a.m. this very morning. But the meeting, first in 5 years, signifies a key diplomatic effort to rebuild trust. The previous special representative talks took place in Delhi in 2019. Doval's visit follows the October 21 agreement on the disengagement and the coordinated patrolling at the Demchok and Debsang friction points, which has been a significant step towards the de-escalation in the matter. The discussions focused on fostering peace and exploring mutually acceptable solutions for the long-standing boundary dispute, in line with the commitment that was made during the October meeting between the leaders of the two nations, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping. This on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Kazan. But that's not all. You've got Chinese Vice President Han Zheng, who met with India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval in Beijing as well, emphasizing the importance of the China-India relationship. Han highlighted that both nations, as ancient civilizations and emerging powers, should foster independence, solidarity, and cooperation for the global influence. Han also stressed the need to implement the consensus reached by the leaders of both the countries and work towards stable development in areas like trade, culture, and political trust, especially as the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries approaches. Ajit Doval described the resumption of special representatives as talks after 5 years as a key step to implement the leaders' consensus, saying it is crucial for advancing bilateral relations. All right then, we've spoken about what Russia has in store for us. We've spoken about what the India-China border talks told us today. But in our America segment, we're going to lead with another president-elect story, because in the lead-up to his return to the Oval Office, US President-elect Donald Trump, he has threatened India. He's threatened India with retaliatory tariffs in response to what he calls New Delhi's high tariffs on certain American imports. Donald Trump also directed similar threats towards Brazil, accusing both countries of imposing steep duties on United States' goods. Now, Trump defined reciprocal tariffs as a policy where countries raise tariffs too much and to match those imposed by their trading partners on similar products. At a press conference in Mar-a-Lago in Florida, Donald Trump stated, "If they tax us, we tax them the same amount. They tax us, we tax them. Almost in all cases, they're taxing us and we haven't been taxing them." Donald Trump also went on to accuse India of charging excessively high tariffs, saying India charges a lot, Brazil charges a lot. If they want to charge us, that's fine, but we're going to charge them the same thing. Now, Donald Trump emphasized the need for fairness in trade relations, stating, if India charges us 100%, do we charge them nothing for the same? He also noted that reciprocity in trade would be a major focus of his administration's policies. And earlier, let's not forget, Donald Trump had warned BRICS nations, including India, that they would face 100% tariffs on their exports if they supported any alternative currency other than the US dollar. Maintaining our focus on the United States, where nearly 1,000 drones have been spotted in New Jersey of the United States and in several parts of the country, prompting a nationwide panic over the matter. The drones are the sizes of school buses, and it has given way to bizarre conspiracy theories as well. House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCall expressed worries that unmanned drones observed over New York and New Jersey might be Chinese surveillance drones, pointing to their closeness to the military facilities and China's record of espionage methods. Meanwhile, US Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has asked for Robin radars to be deployed to get the bottom of the mystery. President-elect Donald Trump reacted to it and said that President Biden knows about it and that the military needs to tell the people.
The government knows what is happening. Look, our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense. I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people, and they should, because the people are really, I mean, they happen to be over Bedminster. Want to know the truth? They're very close to Bedminster. I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster. I've decided to cancel my trip.
Have you received an intelligence briefing on the drones?
I don't want to comment on that.
Well, Pentagon Secretary tried to allay fears of these drones. Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Patrick Ryder said on Tuesday that military installations could receive enhanced capabilities to detect, identify and track these drones following the drone sightings that have gripped the U.S. conspiracy theory sphere. According to Patrick Ryder, these could include active or passive detection capabilities and others known as drone busters as well.
In the case of drones flying near or over U.S. military installations, that in and of itself, just given the volume of drone flights we see on a given day, is not something that's new. We take all of those seriously. We will typically, when we detect them, attempt to classify them and take appropriate measures. Is it possible that some of those are surveilling? Absolutely. But can you make that assumption in every case? Not necessarily. So in each case, commanders have the authority, installation commanders and authorities have the authority to respond appropriately, and will continue to do that.
Then again, it's the ordinary citizens and their reactions that are fueling this entire conspiracy. Ordinary citizens in the U.S. are baffled by the mysterious nature of these drones. Take a look.
Drone sightings in New Jersey started around November 18th. A couple of Sundays ago, I actually went outside and I saw 60 specific drones around my township, which is the township of Pequannock. And this is an issue, and I started reaching out to our elected officials, and I wasn't getting any answers. Nobody knew anything.
So I'm looking up in the sky, and this is like nothing I've ever seen before, and the size is what really spooked me. Like, this is the enormity of this object. It was the enormity of this object, combined with the fact that it was, looking at my watch, 12:43 in the morning, made me think this is something that is bizarre. I never felt like this was a UFO. To me, my first thought was like, this is some sort of weird, like, military secret aircraft experiment kind of thing. Like, that was my first thought. And
we've had reports of unidentifiable drones on the east coast of the United States of America. These drones started off in places like New York, and Pennsylvania and New Jersey, but have since moved to places such as Maryland, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, posing as a big threat to residents in that area and a big inconvenience to the general public. So much so to the point where we've had federal and state authorities start an investigation along with the FBI and get those people involved. In terms of when these sightings started, we started to see them mid-November 2024, again on the east coast of America, but since then they have been spreading pretty quickly all across the United States of America. In terms of who is involved in these investigations, the Department of Homeland Security has been working closely with the FBI along with various other state police forces to try to come to a conclusion in terms of what these drones are and how they're operating and why they're there. It's just all a very big unknown and what we're trying to figure out. But despite collecting over 3,000 public statements, these forces were unable to confirm the origin of these drones and where they came from and why they're there. But the Department of Defense has also acknowledged that they are aware of these drones and put out a statement that, again, they're unaware as well about the origins of these drones, where they come from, and why they are here. In terms of how this hinders the general public's day-to-day life, we've seen the Stewart International Airport in New York had to be closed temporarily due to this issue, and even a delay in a medical emergency, a very serious medical emergency in New Jersey, where an evacuation helicopter at a hospital for a medical emergency had a very big delay, again, due to these drones in the sky. In terms of what they look like and statements from the general public, we've had a variation of those. Some have been saying they're as large as SUVs in the sky, moving together in controlled and coordinated groups, sometimes with their lights on, sometimes with their lights off, just very variants of these groups and how they form and where they move. In terms of official statements, on the bright side, we have had an official statement from White House spokesperson John Kirby. He has put out an official statement saying that these are lawfully manned aircrafts in the sky flying lawfully, and there's no reason to be worried or should there be any speculation of malicious intent, foreign powers, threats to our security. None of that. He has put a stop to all that. He has put an end to all that, saying that these are lawfully manned aircrafts and they're controlled and they're flying in the sky lawfully.
All right then, shifting our focus here, we did bring you all the latest updates as to what happened on the archipelago of Mayotte when Cyclone Chido ripped through that French overseas territory. But Vanuatu has also been dealing with that 7.3 magnitude earthquake, and rescue efforts continued in Vanuatu's capital, Port Vila, after that earthquake that left at least 14 people dead and many trapped in collapsed buildings. Here's a report.
Authorities fear the death toll from Tuesday's 7.3 magnitude earthquake in Vanuatu will rise. Powerful aftershocks, including a 6.1 tremor, rattled the nation overnight, adding to the devastation. More than a dozen people, including 2 Chinese nationals, have been confirmed dead, with over 200 injured in the Pacific Islands capital, Port Vila. UNICEF's Chief of Field Office in Vanuatu, Eric Dupere, told Reuters on Wednesday there were people still inside collapsed buildings.
Very, very concerning and worrying is the status and the condition of the buildings that have cracks and so on, that if we have a too big shock after, that would be very, very damageable.
Several buildings in Port Vila's main town suffered major structural damage, according to the National Disaster Management Office. Concrete pillars on a building housing the US, British, French and New Zealand embassies collapsed. No casualties were reported. Videos circulating online show chaotic scenes